Hi, welcome to Comic Talk. I'm Josh.
And I don't want to live anymore. I feel death knocking at my front door. Living every day like a hustle, another drug to juggle. Another day, another struggle.
It's tough, man. I feel for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, this is our Classic Reads episode for Sandman Volume 1. All right, so yeah, we are talking about the first volume of Sandman. This is Neil Gaiman and a whole bunch of different artists, I guess. From what I could figure out, I don't even want to try to go through all the people that did arcs. There's like a list of like 15 people on these, on like every one of these. I don't know how that was broken up. I guess it's because it's the old like DC Vertigo thing where the trades were like long arcs of like 8 issues and...
Yeah, this trade is fucking huge. It's like 235 pages.
Yeah. I mean, this is Classic Reads because this is a certified classic. This is one of those series that when people say 10 comics to read before you die, greatest comics of all time, best-selling comics, right? Neil Gaiman is best-selling author. He's got actual like novels that are huge. This is really the thing that he did for comics. He has a few other small series that he did, but this is
like the big one.
This is really the one that he consistently worked on and did. This was his, magnus opus of comic books.
Yeah, his Watchmen.
Yeah. Which I love Alan Moore, but come on, shut the fuck up about Watchmen, people. It's okay. It's pretty good.
I liked it.
It's not even his best work.
No.
What
do you think, Swamp Thing?
Probably.
No.
Maybe. I don't know. He's got a lot of cool shit,
Anyway.
Yeah.
So this one starts out, there's this cult that is trying to imprison Death because they want to live forever. But they accidentally trap Death's brother, who is the Sandman. He stays imprisoned in this little glass thing for like 60 years, something like that, 70 years.
60 or 70 years,
yeah. And eventually, the cult gets kind of watered down and stuff. Like the original guy dies and his son just, after a while, doesn't want anything to do with it anymore. And the guy who takes it over after him is just, looking to make a quick buck off of impressionable dumb people. So he ends up getting out. And most of this trade is him trying to get shit back.
So the interesting thing for the beginning of this trade, in my opinion, is this dedication to setting this character up over the course of a couple issues. It's like a prologue of just him never speaking. He doesn't say anything for the first couple issues of this entire series, which is again pretty prophetic, I guess, of Neil Gaiman on the long-term aspects that he was going for with this series. You can tell that maybe he didn't know exactly where he was going with it, but that he had this idea of a long-form storytelling where it's okay to do issues worth of stuff that's just setting this world up and showing you what kind of place it is and the kind of characters that you'll be interacting with and learning about.
And the whole sequence is about, he was following like I believe 4 different people and just talking about like their dreams, and then when they got taken away, like the response to them and stuff, and just really, really cool shit. I have to believe it probably wouldn't fly today. Like if you put out more than one issue like that, they'd be like, look, you need to fucking have Colonel Sanders show up in the next issue.
Yeah, somebody needs to get punched here.
Right.
Yeah. But again, it's so fitting with the character, and it's interesting to show him how he can languish through time to set up this idea of 70 years passing where he's just chilling and just waiting and biding his time. It really gives you this long-term view of the character immediately as compared to jumping directly into the guy just as another person, right? Because once he's out through the rest of this series, he's a person. He may be an Eternal or an Endless or whatever, but he has a personality, a normal, maybe not normal, but...
Well, he wears clothes and, his face looks normal enough.
I think my point is like he's an emotional flawed person. He isn't perfect. So if you were to just start with him, here's a journey that he went on. Here's a thing that he did. You wouldn't have this immediate feeling of somebody who can just sit for 70 years and wait. So by setting this up, not only does he really give us insight to the character that pays off long term, even just in the first volume, but it also sets up this whole idea of how long stretches of this series will be about other people. A lot of this is about how Morpheus or Dream or whatever you want to call him, how he affects others and what sort of impact he has on humanity and the world.
Yeah. And what sort of impact his lack of presence has. I mean, shit just goes to shambles, basically. Like, all these characters we were following in the earlier just, like, get supremely fucked over, you know, and just shadows of them former selves, you know, or dead.
So that first section's pretty great. I love it. How about the art? Can we talk about the art here before we go into more story?
Great. Yeah. I think the paneling was probably very avant-garde for its time. I remember there was a couple where like, turning to the side is, like, one thing, but this you kind of had to, like, it's like a 45-degree angle to make it, like, line up perfect. I thought that was really cool. Kind of reminds me of The Question, I guess, a little bit in a way. I mean, maybe, like, Question meets Witches or something.
Yeah, or maybe to use stuff more from that time, maybe Question and Arkham Asylum, Serious...
Yeah, Arkham Asylum, yeah.
Serious House and Serious Earth, or whatever the hell that's called. Somewhere, this weird line in between the two.
I was kind of struggling. What genre would you describe this as? Because the art definitely plays into it heavily, but with the writing as well.
Gothic drama?
Yeah, it's part horror. I mean, there's some pretty, like, fucked up shit that happens in there, and, you know, pretty fucked up shit that just gets talked about, and it's like, you're reading it, and it's like, oh my god, this came out in, like, 89 or something? Like, it would still, like, make people uncomfortable if it came out now. But it's not a horror series, I would say. I mean, I think that's kind of short-sighted to call it that, because it's so much more than that.
And it's not going for shock value, it's just mining the depths of humanity.
Yeah, it's even got, like, weird fairy tale-ish kind of elements. I mean, like, the deal with, like, Cain and Abel. You know, like, what the fuck was that? You know, it's like weird, like, fable shit, just, you know, stuck in the middle of Sandman.
Yeah, certainly. But then on the other side, we get really into, at least in this first volume, we get really into DC proper as well. We get Martian Manhunter, right? And we
Justice League gets name dropped.
Justice League, and we get some goofy stuff with very light-hearted DC stuff, like the whole thing with Martian Manhunter and the Oreo cookies, and you know, we get some at least nods to that part of the universe to really tie it in and show that they are connected in some way.
We also get Constantine. Arkham Asylum is in it, like, a few times. Dr. Arkham is in it, as well as Dr. Crane. Oh, Etrigan. Let's not forget Etrigan.
Right.
Which, again, throwing in Etrigan and Constantine into this feels completely appropriate.
So how about we break this down and talk about a little of each section.
Okay.
He has to go retrieve his 3 items after he gets loose, and that's kind of the rest of this volume, right? So the first one, if I remember correctly, I may have these out of order, was Martian Manhunter. Is that right? Was that the first one, or was Constantine first?
Constantine was first, because Constantine had his sandbag at one point, but he couldn't even open it, and he could tell it was magic of some sort, but he didn't know what it was, so... He ended up giving it to his junkie ex-girlfriend or something like that. Right.
She gets a hold of it, and we get this really brutal, dark storyline that, again, helps... It's very intentional to help set up the sort of status quos, and it shows us early on that everybody doesn't come out okay. He doesn't solve problems as much as he gets through them.
Right, and also just the weight and significance of each of these, like, artifacts, I guess you would call them. Like, she basically becomes like a junkie off of the sand, and is just, like, in the worst shape that any human being could ever be in as a result. Like, it's fucked up.
It's a satisfying resolution. Like, you really feel like the characters have moved from the beginning of the story to the end and become slightly different from their experience, which in the space of an issue or two is pretty incredible to do, especially with some characters. You know, take John Constantine and move him forward as a character over the space of a couple issues is pretty impressive.
Yeah. Next we had his helmet that he had to get back, and that's the one that he went to hell for. But yeah, he had this very interesting battle with his demon in order to get his helmet back, where they were just like trying to one-up each other in like a game of scenarios or something. Like that was the form of battle. Just kind of interesting.
Yeah, it had these unspoken rules that you kind of glean from the course of them playing the game. It's the oldest game, but it's never described to you. And I think to describe the rules to you would be a bit hackish to do, but also something's gained from not knowing it. You get this sense of he knows a lot more than you do, and too bad, deal with it. That's gonna, again, he's setting up more status quo for how this series is gonna work here, I think, and telling you that you're not always going to know everything that Morpheus knows. And what you're doing is you're along for the ride to see what it's like to be him, not to learn everything about him. It's two different things. A lot of guys, especially I would say modern DC writers, I think this is actually, we might be getting into one of the main differences between older DC now that I'm unraveling this.
Sure.
Is that it seems like a lot of modern DC writers, they want to tell you who the character is. And they spend a whole lot of time trying to explain the character to you. Whereas the old DC, the Vertigo days, a lot of these characters, what they would do is they would just show you the character being the character. And it was up to you as the reader to piece it together and make draw your own conclusions about that person.
And interestingly enough, I think that's maybe a reflection on like the style of storytelling, because in the late 80s DC, we had a lot of British writers and Scottish writers coming up. You know, if you watch British films and stuff, you know, they're very like slice of life, just segment in time. Like, you know, there's not necessarily, I mean, it begins in a place, but there's no like huge significance to that beginning place. And there's even less significance, it seems, to like where it ends. And I think that form of storytelling maybe lends itself way better to comics than it does to film. But again, the writers, you know, the American writers have a very more like, you know, Zack Snyder, for example's form of storytelling, which is just, you know, take this and this and this and this and this and this and this, and then this happens, and then there's big resolution, and, you know, everybody's happy.
Right. And the first two acts are explaining why the third act is going to happen. Right. And then the third act is the thing that you've explained for two acts. It's a very Christopher Nolan way of telling a story. It's very, you know, Inception and the Batman Dark Knight series, all of these films that Christopher Nolan does work in what we call like blockbuster Hollywood storytelling device, right? Which is being emulated by most of the American comic book writers, because that's what they believe audiences want, because that's what's big in film, I think.
Sure.
And I think some of the better comics that we love that are current are more like this. But it just seems like maybe it doesn't get the same press or interest. But this could be rose-tinted glasses, where we're looking at it from now, looking back and picking out the good things. And
yeah, there was a lot of shit that came out, you know, back then too.
There was tons of garbage.
Yeah. By no means was it all great, but I still think the best was better than the best now. So getting back on track, the final one is when he's trying to get the ruby back. Dr. D has it.
This is another one where it goes a completely different direction and shows us more of like the ideas that Neil Gaiman seems to have for this series, where we really begin to focus in on somebody else completely, right? Like this entire last section is really about this other guy mostly, and,
mainly him,
and these other people around him and the things that are happening as he does his stuff with this ruby, right? We go to Sandman, Morpheus, and see him narrowing in on this, but the weight of these last few issues, the end of this trade, is about this other character and how he impacts people. Yeah,
and this is really where like things going not the way you expected them to go, and like the horror-ish elements, like they really like peak, I would say, in this last little bit. Like there's that scene where he's getting that ride from that lady, and you see him like building rapport and, you know, becoming familiar with one another, and then he just fucking kills her anyway. And then we have this very nice waitress lady who works at a diner, and she's a writer, and all of her stories have happy endings, you know, and she just like absolutely loves all of her characters. You know, all of her regulars are her characters. And then shit just goes like so wrong so quick, and it just gets like worse and worse and worse by the hour. Like literally by the hour, it's paced out, and just goddamn horrible.
Yeah, it gets really, really dark, and it doesn't let up. Being that it's, you know, it's a DC comic, you keep getting this feeling that the hero's going to save the day. You know, that's the normal way that this sort of arc would go. Yeah. Things will get worse, and then someone will come in and save the day for somebody, right? Somebody's going to come out of this the other end. You know, it's even like classic horror films. There's always the one person who like makes it through the experience. I don't think there was.
No, they'll die.
They're all just fucked. Like, here's a story about everybody fucked, right? But man, it's a really compelling read.
Yeah. And I will say the way that he sort of regains that last thing, I mean, it's a little bit comic booky, but I mean, the premise is so far out anyway. It's like, can you really say that? You know, I mean, it's not like one of those, because it's a comic book type things. It's just because of like the world he inhabits. Like, I mean, you really can't say, well, that would never happen, you know, here, because I don't fucking know.
I agree. That's one of the interesting elements of this character, I think, is the high fantasy element of it allows him to really play with the philosophy of the world. You know, solutions can be philosophical because that's all there is.
Yeah.
It's not one of these things where it feels ham-fisted, like a crammed-in solution, because what other kind of solution would you have with this character?
Right.
Like, that's all this character is. He's like a pure being of fantasy.
Yeah. I mean, the whole like premise behind it is that he made this ruby out of elements of himself.
Right.
You know, so can you really say like what logically would happen like in this and this and this scenario? Like, no, it's absurd to begin with.
Right. He's beyond logic in the first place. He's the personification of dreaming.
Yeah.
So all logic goes out the fucking window right there, right? Which is used to great effect to say, you know what, don't worry so much in this series or these stories that I'm telling about working out the logic of how these things work. If you know, the solution is the solution. Who cares? What matters is the people and the drama and how it affects people, right?
Yeah. And using dreams as sort of like the linchpin of the whole thing, I think it was like pretty genius, you know, because you don't need, you know, an alien from another planet that, you know, gets superpowers from a yellow sun. You don't need a bolt of lightning hitting a dude and making him, you know, run really fast to the point where him running creates the space-time continuum. Like, that's all. I mean, dreams are fucking weird enough as they are. Like, you don't need to add anything to that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it's built-in crazy, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And
boundless crazy.
Yeah. And so lastly, beyond the general plot here, the writing itself is just beautiful prose. It just rolls as you read it. You know, you just feel yourself kind of sliding through the narrative. At least I do. Maybe it just speaks well to me, but I don't think so because it's so, you know, well regarded.
I absolutely loved it.
Yeah, you just slip through the whole thing, and the voice of every character feels so dead on. When he's writing a known character, it feels right, and it has its own voice. Everybody has a very clear and distinct voice through the whole thing, and especially Dreams himself. His voice is so different. It would be easy for a lesser writer to write a character like this and make him so aloof and hard to follow that you lose any connection to the protagonist at all. But somehow he manages to ride that line between a very strange, otherworldly character and somebody who you can relate to through his struggles. It's really impressively done.
Yeah, and you really relate to him on very basic levels. I mean, naturally, if you feel for somebody, you want them to succeed and stuff like that, and showing little bits of personality and like ambitions and all that sort of thing. Like once you connect with them on that base level, I think you really figured out that you can really like do whatever the hell you want with it. And it's very well done.
All right. Well, last of all, everybody out there, I imagine a good chunk of our viewers have probably read this, and probably even more if any of you aren't our regular viewers and you're checking this out because it says Neil Gaiman or the Sandman. There's 10 volumes of this. I don't think we're never going to make 10 of these.
No.
It's just not going to happen. Every volume probably deserves a video from somebody. You can go find other people that do these too. But which volumes of this, if we were to do one or two more volumes, which ones? I'm thinking probably 5, and then who knows what else. So what do you guys think? I'd love to hear which ones they think we should do. They all kind of stand alone pretty well, so we could jump into any of them and read them. So let us know which ones of these you think we should do. Beyond that, is there any other stuff like this that maybe we've missed? I mean, we have some stuff for Saga of the Swamp Thing, which I think is surprisingly similar in tone and feel to this.
It's comparable.
It's different but same. Different but same. But what are some other things, maybe not from this time period, that harken to this style? Is there anything that you can think of currently that is maybe in the same vein? Maybe from smaller publishers that we've missed? I would love to know about that. To me, this feels like the predecessor to a lot of the stuff that you see at Dark Horse. But I've never been that familiar with Dark Horse's stuff. So is there anything over there or any of those other like Xenoscope that maybe we've missed that has a similar style to this? I'd love to know that too.
Yeah. Is there an IDW Sandman? Let us know.
Yeah. Ninja Turtles, Nocturnes, and turtle shells.
Facebook, Twitter.
Yeah. So thanks for joining us. And we do this every Monday. We release a conversation on either trades. We do some bargain bin stuff. And we also have just chats about things that have to do with the industry and our feeling about comic books in general and different stuff like that. We'll have one of those. We'll have another one of those soon, I think.
Yeah.
And every Thursday we talk about our weekly poll list. So you can, if you subscribe to us, you'll get like 2 videos a week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty good, right?
I think that's pretty good.
Yeah.
We'll just have to wait and see, I guess. Anyway, thanks. Bye.
Later.